We're going to try to continue in the same interactive, energetic manner way as Shira did. And this panel is going to be maybe a little more provocative than you're used to. There are going to be some slides also. So, dear panelists, Mark, Shira. Yeah. So, as you know, we did some preparation. There are going to be some slides, so you might refer to it as I go to. I will not, obviously, introduce Shira because she was just speaking now. I will introduce the other three gentlemen through cases through which I will then also pose questions for all of them. But to open up, I would start with a provocation. So a fake feeling of progress. I will point out one fake feeling of progress that most probably all of you have right now. So you have your tickets, you arrive to Maribor, you're sitting here through a couple of hours, there's going to be lunch, and then one day and next day. And to many of you, this maybe brings already a feeling of progress. Guess what? Think again. Just coming here, sitting in the audience for a couple of hours or 2 days is no progress, okay? Your time is probably better spent somewhere else than here. Even though you've heard a lot of good tips just now by Shira, that's no progress. That's no, like, show me the money now out of the tips, okay? You still need to do a lot of work. You still need to work with the customers. And that's not only my opinion. Last year, one of the keynotes in PODIM 2013 was Miha Mikek from Celtra. I guess most of you know him very well. And in his talk, he explicitly said that most of the startups spend way too much time on conferences, events, meetups, such as PODIM, even though the PODIM is the event of the year for all the startup community. You might say, you know, but look, everybody who's anything in the startup community is here, you know, all the investors, all the other startups, the mentors and so on. Yeah, but that's no progress, you know, like, show me the money out of this. I know I'm being provocative, but still, I will give you another example. I have a friend, his name is Jure. He has a startup, it's called Doctrina. What they do is not important, but their customer segment is important, okay? So he deals with pharmacies and pharmaceutical companies. He asked me a couple of days ago, you know, he saw, you know, like, you're going to be on PODIM and you're involved and so on. Should I go to PODIM? And then as we were discussing, he said that in the same time, not today, but tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, the most important event, yearly event of his customer segment, of the Slovenian Pharmaceutical Society, is happening in Portorož. Guess what my answer was? So he is not here today, but he's going to be in Portorož. So he has nothing to do in Maribor, in PODIM, while his customers are in Portorož. So that's the, let's say, the opening statement that I have. Now, this is really important for startups. Thank you. This is important for startups where you really need to be close to the customers because you're still discovering, still developing. Now, when you are, let's say, not a startup, but a grown-up, you have a company, you know, that many employees, already serving customers, there's recurring revenue and so on, and you seem that you made it, like Cosylab. They seem to have it cozy, okay? They're the big kahunas, you know, they own it. You know, they're in the 5 of the 6, you know, big physics projects. Mark Pleško is from Cosylab. Is this true? Is this like, is everything that glitters really gold? Have you always done it like this? Or, now the question for you and then for the rest of you, were there really moments where you succumbed to the confirmation bias and you did not realize that your baby is ugly?
I've listened to Shira's talk very carefully, and that's why we say, yes, it's all true. Everything that is written on our webpage is true, even more so, right? We are even better than that, right? So this is the official answer. Now you want to hear the unofficial answer, right? Okay. The real answer. Okay, so the point is this. First of all, I would want to say that whatever I say is my own personal feeling, and your mileage not just may vary, but will vary, okay? Second, very important to know is, confirmation bias comes with the job. That's important. I mean, we are all entrepreneurs, right? And you have to be crazy to be an entrepreneur. You have to be maybe a psychopath, you have to be manic depressive, whatever, but you have to believe in yourself. I mean, I just tell you that if I had known from the start all the obstacles that waited for us. And all the problems that we had to overcome before we came in the top 6, I would have never started. Right? So confirmation bias is very important, it's very helpful. But of course you have to be careful, and that's why it's good to be a manic depressive if you're an entrepreneur, not just a manic. Because when you have your depressive phase, then you recalibrate yourself and you say, well, maybe we are not so good, and maybe we should do things differently, and maybe we should correct mistakes. And then hopefully the depressive phase is short enough that then you're on top again, and then you say, yeah, sure, but now we know how to do it. So basically, this is the honest answer in short.
Okay, thank you. I was going to take the next step into the most memorable case of confirmation bias of when you didn't realize your baby is ugly. Dilyan, maybe you?
Well, I've been investing in startups, and actually from my previous fund, we invested in a company that was successful all over the place. So it was 2006. And it was a company, business model was kind of successful, money-making across the board. So we said, why not do this in Bulgaria? And for 3 years, we were spending money like crazy on marketing and being happy with spending 1,000 euros for customer acquisition and then getting 200 out of it and losing it next year. So we spent like 3 years fooling ourselves of how successful we are because we are constantly growing and all that stuff. But we didn't realize that our baby was ugly. Generally, there was no market for this, and then Google crashed the whole thing, and the crisis hit. And then, talking about when we realized it's ugly, that was the time when we ran out of money, actually.
Okay, so you said 3 years?
Yeah, we spent 3 years.
Spending 3 years, customer acquisition of 1,000 to get 400 back until you ran out of money. I would say that's a good example. Daniel?
Well, my baby quick has 2 parts. It's like a service business, but also we have 2 products. And I would say that my baby is a little bit beautiful and a little bit ugly, and it is changing all the time. And when we started, especially with the products, I think that we had great ideas and great products. And then when we started to talk with potential clients and show them the idea, and everybody was reacting like, awesome, this is like the best tool ever, like we will buy it. And great, we employed a lot of people and everything. But then we got a feeling that when we started to want to charge them for this product, we didn't get such a good feedback. And I think that positive feedback is very important. It's very important so you can get motivation for next steps, but I think that it is not enough, and the revenues are the most important, and this is like the best possible feedback. And on service side, I would say we are growing very fast, and we are not getting only positive feedback, then a lot of new jobs, a lot of new clients, and this is awesome. But we have a problem that when we get a lot of job, what's next? And then we see that our baby is here a little bit ugly because we have a problems. It's so hard to find digital advertising experts, and it's so hard to find digital advertising experts with management skills. And when you're growing very fast, and now we have 70 employees, you have to develop this whole hierarchy, and we have so big problems here because the middle management is not ready for this. And then when you get so many good clients, but you have other issues because you don't have enough good organization and skills to do these jobs, then you have some problems with not so beautiful company, I would say.
All right, thank you. Shira, next. And as I said, we're continuing in an interactive fashion, which means if you have a question, just like before with Shira, just raise your hand.
So I had, last year I had an idea for a startup, and we started to test it. And a friend of mine was doing the technology side, I was doing the marketing side. And it was a crazy idea. So we started to test it, and when I was actually on the ground in San Francisco, I was able to get, it's a marketplace, and when I was on the ground in San Francisco, I'm not going to go into the details of what it was, but let's just say that when I was on the ground in San Francisco, everybody was like, yeah, that's amazing, and it's a great idea, and I would totally pay for that. And then we created a really rough MVP. So if you're launching with something that you're not embarrassed by, you launch too late. And we were mortified by this, so we launched right on time. And tried to get people to download it, and not even my own girlfriends would use it. And it was just like, all right, this is an ugly baby. It was all testing. It was all through the testing phase. And we never actually turned it into a real product, because if you can't get people to use it in the very first place, not even your friends, you know that you really don't have something there, or at least it's the wrong way that you are building it in the first place. So that got killed pretty quickly, but we did it in the testing phase.
So killed it really quick.
Yeah, failed fast. It's pretty funny.
Any more comments on this? Or no. Now, I said before, not everything that glitters is gold. And there's another proverb that if you follow the rainbow, all the way to the end where it touches the earth, you're gonna find the proverbial pot of gold. To most of us, that's not true. But actually, it is true. In many cases, this pot of gold has a name. It's called EU grants, or EU framework programs, or EU development funds. And a lot of you know what I'm talking about. And in these cases, in many cases, fake feeling of progress is a norm. Reporting fake feeling of progress in some of these cases is a feature, is something you need to do to keep this pot of gold. I'm being provocative, but I guess every one of us knows of at least one such project. Now, that hurts the four of us, not you. You're American Israeli. This pot of gold is our money, it's our, okay? But I'm still positive that most of the projects are still decent and good, and money is well spent. Now, this is a sake to one of the accelerators, which got the European money, 11, the other one is Launch Hub, and 11 is being managed by Dilyan, okay? And now, those of you who know 11 know why the name 11. It comes from the name 11 kilometers per second, which is the escape velocity that a rocket needs to escape from gravity of Earth. They would translate this to a startup needs escape velocity to escape the gravity of failure, okay? Now, I have two questions for Dilyan and then for the rest of you. First, how do you know that this 11 kilometers per second is actually not a fake number? And then the cockpit that this shuttle has, what kind of metrics do they need to have? What kind of metrics does the company, the startup, or you personally, you choose and stick to actually make it?
Yeah, we do utilize European funding, so we are one of those guys that hit the end of the rainbow. But let me take a step back and just try to tell you what our feeling is. I mean, we've invested in 70 companies in the last 18 months. So we've seen like 250 founders go through our program. And we have our 6th batch right now, and we have opened just our 7th application window. And yeah, you're right, Shira is American Israeli, they have a different mindset. People in Europe, I would say half of the people we see that apply to our program are entrepreneurs, and the other half are just looking for a temporary employment with somebody, which is us. And sometimes we just miss it, so we employ some people, and then they spend 3 months or 6 months, they run out of money, and they come back and say, listen, we found this fantastic metric, like our clients like us. They're not paying us any money, but they like us a lot. We have 20,000 Facebook fans. So, fantastic. So it is true, and a lot of the times, it's not about, it's the team that determines what metric will they use, and for us, it's actually getting to know the team. This is kind of our validation. We don't track things, we don't, actually spend a lot of time going through the numbers of the companies, but we spend a lot of time with the teams. And this is where we kind of find out whether it's worth investing more than our first 25,000 euros. So shall we invest up to 200K? Or shall we just bail out and tell them, listen, your baby doesn't, work for us. So you do whatever you want, but we're not going to play anymore. And we've seen that a lot. We've seen a lot of teams that go and find out a metric that works for them, and they come back and they track it and they show it to us. So we see a spike in, let's say, page views. But nobody gives us kind of the proportionate spike in marketing expenses at that particular period of time, right? So this is where we have to dig deeper. And with so many projects, we don't have the luxury to spend a lot of time with each of them. Rather, we work with the people, and then it's a trust relationship. So we work with them on this basis.
Now, back to the pot of gold. To whom do you report?
We report to our investors, which is the European Investment Fund. And yeah, talking about what our metric is, generally we have to generate return on our investors' investment, but this is going to come in like 5, 7, 10 years time. So right now, what I believe we're tracking, and I think we're doing pretty good on that, we realize that there are not so many technological entrepreneurs in Europe. So not many people have started a tech company and actually built it and sold it. So right now what we are tracing is how many new founders do we fund, how many people do stay in our community, and how many people are kind of affiliated to 11, to Launch Hub, to the region, which are technological entrepreneurs. So our metric right now, which is really important, is, we trace things like how many people follow-up invested in a company, how many new investors, how much money did we attract. But generally for us, the most important part is how many founders do we get that stay around and help the other founders, like the new batches. So we recycle the talent, and then new teams are kind of taught entrepreneurship by the former batches. And it kind of becomes a very interesting rolling circle. So it's really helpful. So this is our metric.
Good. Daniel, metrics, Degordian, your personal.
Well, again, we have a service-based digital agency and the products. And I think in digital agency, the most important is, of course, revenue, but also margins. Because for every service, we have to see how much revenues are we getting and what are our costs to see what are the margins. Because in service-based business, there is a huge potential that you are selling a service and then you're losing much more time developing this service and you start to become unprofitable. And that's why I think revenues and margin. And in products, well, we are selling like products on monthly basis, like a software as a service. And here we are trying to measure like how much did we sell, what is the time spent of the client with us. So is it like 1 month, 12 months, or maybe more? And is he buying one product or more products? And with this data, we can calculate like what is the real, value of one average customer for us, and then we can calculate like how much can we spend on advertising and like try to calculate return on investment. And I think that these are the most important KPIs, and we should focus on that. And I would like just to add, I saw some examples when talking about EU funds and so on, the companies which are only searching for, EU funds and investments, and they are not focusing on getting customers, revenues, and so on. And I think that that's not smart. You have to always be focused on revenues and clients, and this can be only maybe a little bit help and so on. So revenues, well, that's obvious.
Okay, follow-up question. I would argue, you said that's not smart. I think that's the smartest thing, You just get funds, and you file reports, and you get the money. Obviously joking and provoking, but I see these companies also. But how about your personal metrics, like your time here in Maribor? Why is it worth it?
Good question. Tell me.
Okay, PODIM people, you need to tell him why he's here.
But I hope that this is type of advertising.
Okay, good. I mean, it's good that you know. Mark, metrics, Cosylab, yourself.
Yeah, okay. I mean, we have, of course, a lot of metrics, KPIs, but I don't want to talk about that. What is my metrics against confirmation bias? Is I have a lot of good ideas. I always have good ideas, right? And all my ideas are good. So my only way to check on that is to go out of myself. So in terms of the company, I have to go out to the market. I'm basically a sales guy. So I have a lot of ideas what we could do for the customers and how we could sort of make the life of our customer easier. And the simple metrics is, do they believe me? Are they prepared to put down hard cash? Then my idea is good. Most of the time probably they're not, right? Which means that I have to go back home and correct my ideas. And the other, like my personal is that I always have good ideas, especially in the evening. In the morning when I wake up, somehow I remember I had a good idea, but I cannot phrase it. So this is the first test. And the other test is talking to other people. My wife is the first one. So, if I have a good idea, I try to explain it to her, and then I have to not just explain her the idea because she doesn't know all the background, but I have to explain her the background. And while I explain the background, I realize maybe it's not so easy to explain. So that's a very, very, very good check. And in general, I mean, talking to other people, making them admit that this is a good idea, especially in Slovenia, because people in Slovenia don't like to admit that your idea is good, right?
So it's a good test bed. Shira.
Vanity metrics. Well, when you decide what you're going to be looking for in the very, very beginning, before you actually get started, and you state your goals, and you make sure that, and then you watch the progress. So that's a better way to figure out make sure that you don't have the vanity metrics. But another thing is, and this is what we talked about before, so there was, I'm going to give you an example. There was a company that I was mentoring at Google, Google campus in Tel Aviv, and they had decided to do a B2C product. Now, they were B2B, going for enterprise. It was a logistics company. The product was brilliant, okay? I wrote about them in the Next Web, and I loved what they were doing. So when I mentored them and they're telling me about this B2C product, I'm like, why are you wasting your resources on that? You're a startup. You only have so many resources, okay? You should be aiming for your product and or aiming for your target market and getting them to buy. And then the sooner they buy, you get to find out what's wrong, you get the product feedback loop going, and you make more money. And they were putting 20% of their time on this. I was literally screaming at them in the middle of Google campus, and I'm sure you could all imagine that. And then a month later, and they were being really stubborn, which is shocking for an Israeli company. And then finally, a month later, I get this tweet from them saying that they finally gave it up and they were putting all of their focus on the B2B side. They're really successful now, which I knew they were going to be because their product is amazing. But you can go off scope, and that can end up killing your company. So you really need to make sure, just because something's sexy does not necessarily mean it's as sexy as making money. Making money is actually the sexiest thing you could be doing. That's making a really good company, that's it. Don't go for something where, you know, everybody's gonna be like, oh, I saw that there. You know what, that really doesn't matter if you don't exist 6 months later.
Okay, so the term sexy, what's not, came up here again, and it's gonna come up here again a couple moments later, as it did in the previous panel. Maybe touching on the personal metrics, your time being well spent.
Yeah, my time is really well spent. 2 reasons. One, I love Slovenia. So on my personal side, I'm really happy. My husband's totally jealous that I'm here right now. You have no idea. And then on the other, every time I give a talk and it's, say, videoed and it's put on YouTube, that's more social proof of my expertise. And as I said, reputation management.
So this is going on YouTube? Yes, no? Blaž? Yeah, all right. So moving on. Now, when this whole circus here in Maribor called PODIM, the roller coaster, will be ending tomorrow, another one, a longer one, a bigger one, will start about 400 kilometers southeast in Belgrade. The biggest, as it says, the key Southeast Europe startup event, Started Fest. I know many of you will actually go there. You know, you will, and a couple of others. And there's going to be a couple of sub-events during this fest. One of them is called course correction. It's actually, it's a practical full-day workshop on a lean startup methodology. So I'm going to transition to the course correction. So you're trying to achieve your escape velocity. Now you need to course correct in order to stay on the right track before you burn out. Which is leading me to introduction of Daniel. As I was preparing, I saw that iStudio, as it was named before, and now Degordian, the company that Daniel founded, actually was already invested in by a VC company headed by Jure Mikuš, who, together with Andras Tori, was given a special thanks in the beginning. And I went and asked Jure, you know, like, Daniel's going to be in the panel, you know, you invested into him, we're going to talk about fake feeling of progress. You might want to help me what to ask him, you know, you're sort of checking on the progress. And the answer was surprising. He said, you know what the biggest problem we have now is? It seems they never failed so far. It seems that everything they, Daniel and Tomislav, do works, and their trajectory is just up. And what we're worried about is what will happen when something will go wrong. Now, I took the liberty of taking a screenshot of the new Mercedes S, which has a sort of a semi-automatic, I think they call it intelligent drive, where you can take hands off and it drives on its own. Okay, they're testing it. It's actually in production. You can buy this feature, and I would say I would make a comparison here that Degordian right now is on a sort of a autopilot. You know, everything is working smoothly, but there's this red button. You know, in case something goes wrong, you press it. Now, Jure would like to know, how will you react it when you will realize that, you know, your baby actually is ugly, that something's not working? How will you face reality? So the question for you is sort of a future-oriented, while for the three of you, it's backward-oriented. First, Daniel.
Well, I think in a company first is not so perfect as Jure thinks, but let's say it is very perfect. I think that our biggest job here now is that we are trying to make our baby as beautiful as possible. So, you know, like cosmetics and so on, so she doesn't become ugly. And here I think the risk management is really important. And what we are doing, for example, if you look at this service-based business, we are trying for every service to measure on monthly basis, like what are the revenues, what is the growth, what is the number of clients growth, what are the margins and so on. And with this analytics to see really what are the trends and where are we decreasing, where are we increasing. So we have more revenue streams, and if one starts to decrease, others probably going up. We are trying always to grow and to expand to other markets. Now we are opening, for example, a company in Austria. So we are getting new revenues, and with this I think that the risk is really, really low of the baby to become really ugly. But as you said, she can become ugly maybe one day. And I think that here it's very important that we are realistic, that we measure everything, and if the baby starts to become ugly, to see where it is ugly and to start to fix that. And if really it's unfixable, that we have always a plan like to downsize a company. So to know, well, it's not nice to say, but to know in which teams maybe, you know, to lower headcount. And yeah, so I hope that it won't happen, but...
It will.
Thank you.
It always does. I mean, ask Jure.
Yeah.
Dilyan.
Well, my take on this is, I mean, if you're a parent, you know that your child is always the prettiest, right? I mean, my daughter is the most beautiful daughter in the world. Yeah. So when you're talking startups, it's pretty much the same, because the people we see spend all day and all night living and breathing their own startup. I mean, people like Daniel and his team are a rare thing to actually, you know, take a step back every now and then and see how things work and if everything's going on course. So what I think helps for course correction is when you have a third party, take a look at your development, how you're faring so far, and actually give you independent feedback. And this is where, I mean, I'm going to talk more accelerator bullshit, right? You know, because that's what I do. But this is where we have mentors, and this is where we step in as investors, people that will see progress in 3 months' time and decide whether they want to give more money. Because the teams themselves, they just steam ahead, they try to be as fast as possible. Yeah, they do lean, they do design thinking approach, and they do all that stuff. But at the end of the day, it's got to be a person who is outside the core team that's going to tell them, listen, guys, you're going in the wrong direction. Maybe you should change course. And initially, when we started 11, we only had one set of mentorship, which was the very first week, actually second week of the program, and then we would let them go. Now we changed that, so now we have mentorship in the second week, and we have a mentorship one month from there. So that same people that met with that startup in the very beginning can see them a month later and see what's happening, where they're moving, what they learned in that 1 month, and then actually help them, you know, take that step back and see the bigger picture and decide where they want to go. So my perspective on course correction is you need some help from people which are not in the team, or you need very smart people like Daniel.
Mark, course correction, facing the reality.
Well, we are not a startup anymore. We started the company 12 years ago, so we are not big either. But you know, we are too big to do course corrections on a very short scale. We are 85 people, and so what we are now trying to learn is to make the course correction before we realize we failed, right? Which again, you need all these KPIs and all these measurements and all these things. And I think here's very important that we have a great team. This is the key, right? I mean, you know, of course, I'm the smartest guy in the company. That's clear. I'm the founder. I'm an entrepreneur. And no doubt about that. I hope nobody doubts it here. But the reality is, of course, that, you know, I have brilliant coworkers. And fortunately, they let me do my, you know, live in my confirmation bias world, and they take care that the company is really running well. And this is, I think, you know, this is the course correction thing there is. So you know, we have this let's say dichotomy in a certain way, right? I have all these ideas. I'm always pressing forward, always in the same direction. And the guys say, look, Mark, you know, we cannot do this. You know, we don't have enough people, or, you know, we don't have enough money, or, you know, this is a crazy deal, or the risk is too high. And so it's really, you know, it is not I don't know, I read all these management books and, about Steve Jobs, and he was a smart guy. He knew exactly everything, like 10 years in advance. And so I'm not kind like this, and I don't think anybody really is. At the end, I think it's really, you need a bipolarity or even multipolarity. And you need all these different forces, who tear in one direction. And then the course correction happens when you are listening to all those forces. Not then, not when you say, I'm the smartest guy in the room, I know this is the way we go. But you listen to everybody and say, okay, Shira, what do you think? I mean, is it going to work from the marketing point of view? And then, we have to be empathetic enough to listen to all those things. And then, as I say, you do it early on. And then hope you're going to work. I mean, up to now, apparently we survived, but what will happen tomorrow, I don't know.
Thank you.
Work with people who argue with you. If you have a bunch of people around you who always say yes, and if you are the type who can't handle criticism, then you're going to have a problem. If you are working with people who respect you enough and are really, really bright and preferably smarter than you, then, and they are giving you information, listen to it. They're giving it to you for a reason. They're not giving it to you because, they like the sound of their own voice. They're giving it to you because they want to give helpful information, help the company. So, look for people who debate and argue and disagree with you and will tell you no and say that's a bad idea to your face. Another thing, listen to your customer. Your customers are saying things. Listen to your customer and implement what the customers, especially paying customers. There's a huge difference between a customer who gets something for free and a customer that pays. The one that pays is the one you want to listen to. The other one is just giving you things that are nice to have but aren't necessarily the same basic features that a customer that's paying will actually need. So listen to your customers, listen to the people who work with you. We have a client whose product has gone in a direction that's not so pretty. So we had the difficult conversation that your baby is ugly, actually, in the past month. And I'm like, look, you got to fix it because our marketing is not going to help you. Your baby's ugly. Nobody's talking about it, and you're getting a lot of negative feeling online because of it. So they're going to have to do a course correction product-wise. And so listen to the people who are around you.
Maybe more specifically on the when shit hits the fan, when you see that the baby's ugly. How do you face reality? How do you go through these really difficult times? Maybe if anyone can pitch on this. Because one is, course correction and metrics, but then, it's there. You need to face it. How do you face it?
It depends on if you actually know why it's ugly. If you know why it's ugly, it's pretty simple. Fix it. Yeah. If you don't know why it's ugly, then you have to figure out what's wrong.
I would say cut the losses and start new. I mean, people often, they overdo it because they have some sunk cost, and they say, we already spent so much time, right? And, we just can't, I mean, the money we spent up to today is lost money. It doesn't exist anymore, right? Yeah. So we just have to look for the future. I think that's the key issue.
You touched on the sentence that I actually wanted to use, sunk costs. And I know, in MBA, they teach us sunk costs. And that's something that they don't teach you in university, but they teach you at MBA. So sunk costs, to all in the audience, means, if you were thinking about what I said in the beginning, maybe my time here at PODIM is not well spent, but fuck, I spent, 200 euros or whatever the ticket was, I'm going to go through it. No, 200 euros for the ticket of PODIM is sunk cost. If your time here is not spent the best it could be, if you have customers somewhere, stand up and leave. That's sunk costs. To the rest of you, are there any questions?
Nobody's leaving.
No questions so far. Okay, there's a question by Urshka there in the middle.
Too ugly.
How do you decide when your baby is too ugly? What does too ugly mean? There's no facelifting. There's just like, pull the plug. I don't know. Answers? How do you decide when it's too ugly? I don't have an answer for this.
Well, there is no definitive answer to that. I mean, there is obviously a point of time where you have to say your baby is ugly beyond repair. So you just have to give up. Yeah. Give it to a foster home or, let someone, I mean, it can be anything. It may be cruel, but at some point of time, it's just too ugly. So you have to live without it. And then, I mean, our perspective on this is we see many people that find the company, hit the first obstacle and say, okay, it's too ugly. So let's give it up and let's do something else.
Let's make a new one.
Yeah, it's easy and also it's fun, you know. But I would say there is a very fine balance between persevering and actually quitting, and it's up to each and everyone to decide when to quit. And you know, it was a few times mentioned earlier that Europe is a place where if you fail, particularly Germany, if you fail, you'll never be able to do that same thing again. While in Israel, if you fail, people ask you what you learned and just move on. And this is the reason we spent 3 years actually investing €1,000 in a customer with a lifetime value of 400, because if we say we failed, we would be forever the guys that failed, right? So this is where people have to be really realistic on the options that are available, and really be a very, very rational decision whether did you exhaust every option to kind of prepare the situation and make it better, or is it about time to quit? And this is where, again, I mean, speak with people that have a different opinion, hear as many of them as you can, and then you decide what to do.
Any other comments on this one? Then, Shira, for you, the next time you're going to be somewhere on the stage and trying to make an example between Germany and Israel and failure status, achievement, so on, you will talk about something else that's priming you now. Maybe you've seen Jose in the first panel. He actually started the first fail conference here in this part of Europe, okay? And we are actually actively demystifying the whole failure, stigma that is here. So we are inviting people to talk openly about their failures, and it's happening in Slovenia, and now we're exporting it to Austria and neighboring countries. So the next time you're going to address this topic, you say, and by the way, I've been at this startup event in Slovenia, and what they start is a fail conference and and so on. So we're going to get rid of this failing stigma in Slovenia. That's what we do. Now, since we only have a couple of more minutes, I know we planned this. There's going to be another little more provocative question for you at the end. There's going to be a special person coming here to Maribor also tonight, our president, and he will be giving the awards and so on. And then some of us will be lucky enough to have to enjoy dinner with him. Okay? To most of us, that should prove as a solid feeling of progress. Having dinner with president, that's like feeling of progress. But is it really? Okay? Now, I will paraphrase, obviously taking out of the context what Shira just said, like, I don't care how sexy XYZ, the B2C app, whatever is, money is sexier, and a successful company is the sexiest. Focus on that. Now, on one hand, you have the high life, the dinner with the president. On the other hand, you still have customers that you will need to talk to and work with and so on. Like, Shira, the question for you, how can this be more sexier than the dinner with president? And pick whichever president. You need to press.
That's a can of worms. So I would say that they're
Shira was caught speechless.
How many times do you get to have dinner with the president?
Well, I don't know.
It's
You
a
tell
big
me.
deal. So, you get to build a successful company, or if you build an unsuccessful company, you get to try again and have another successful company. But you don't often get invited to have dinner with the president. My phone will be off during the dinner. That doesn't happen very often. That's all I have to say.
That's a good question. Thank you very much. Any questions, or we wrap it up? No questions. So with that, I would like to sincerely thank the whole panel, and a round of applause. Thank you very much.